And then he went out into the forests in Gaya and began his period of austerities. And then he remembered at that time the period when he had been sat under the rose apple tree. And he realized that actually was the path to awakening. That jhana that he had got at that time led to awakening. The jhana that he had attained when he was a boy was based on mindfulness and insight. And it's mindfulness and insight that leads to awakening. And he realized while he was exhausted, as he was at that point, he could not get stable mind. He could not get a stable and concentrated mind. And so he decided to go on alms round in the nearby village of Sainia. And he went out on alms round. It's when he went out on alms round that the group of 5 ascetics who had been attendants on him, they saw that he was taking food again, and they thought he's just given up, and they left him at that point. Then one morning he went out, and he was sat under a tree, and Sidharta came out, and then she gave this milk rice to the Bodhisattva. So from there he moved towards the Bodhi tree, which is, the Bodhi tree at what we now call Bodh Gaya. And as he was going, he met a Brahmin grass cutter called Satya. And Satya gave him 8 handfuls of kusa grass. Kusa grass is very fragrant grass. So he gave this grass, and the Lord Buddha took it and he threw it at the foot of the Bodhi tree. And as it landed at the foot of the Bodhi tree, it turned into a diamond throne, the Vajrasana. What we now call the Vajrasana, the diamond throne underneath the Bodhi tree, where the Lord Buddha sat. And he made this vow, may my skin dry up, may my bones become dust, may my sinews and flesh just dry up, but I will not rise from the diamond throne until I have attained awakening. And then Mara, old Mara, who had been following him for 6 years from the time that he had gone out from his renunciation, looking all the time. Mara was looking for unwholesome thoughts of sensuality, unwholesome thoughts of hatred or anger, unwholesome thoughts of delusion to appear in the Bodhisattva's mind. He had been chasing him and looking for these for 6 years and had not found them. So Mara knew that the Bodhisattva was on the verge of awakening, and he decided he must bring all his powers to bear to prevent the Bodhisattva from attaining awakening, which would lead to the release of beings from samsara, which were under Mara's sway. So he brought all his armies of various sorts to attack the Bodhisattva, and he stirred up cyclones to attack the Bodhisattva, and he brought out tsunamis to attack the Bodhisattva, and he threw stones and rocks to attack the Bodhisattva, and he threw weapons at the Bodhisattva, and hot coals were thrown at the Bodhisattva, and hot sand and hot mud were also thrown at the Bodhisattva. And at the end he brought darkness all over the earth to try to prevent the Bodhisattva from attaining awakening. But none of these things were sufficient to put the Bodhisattva off his quest for awakening. And the Bodhisattva, of course, during all this period, 4 immeasurables, 100,000 aeons, such a long period, had fulfilled the paramis, generosity, virtue, renunciation, wisdom, energy, patience, truth, determination, loving kindness and equanimity. He had fulfilled all these paramis and he was ready for the time of awakening. And he called on the earth to bear witness that he was worthy to be sat on the Vajrasana, and the earth bore witness to the Bodhisattva, and Mara was overthrown and was washed away along with his hordes, and the Bodhisattva was left. At the end of the day, on the Vesak full moon day, sitting at the foot of the Bodhi tree. And then, during the night, in the first watch of the night, he attained Pobenivasanusanana, which is knowledge of his previous lives. He remembered all the previous lives that he had been through. He knew what his name was, he knew what his family was, he knew what his position in the society was, he knew what food he had eaten, he knew what pleasure and pain he had experienced, and he knew what lifespan he had attained. And he remembered 1 life, and he remembered 2 lives, 3 lives, 4 lives, 5 lives, 10 lives, 50 lives, 100 lives, 1,000 lives, 10,000 lives, 1,000,000 lives, 1,000,000,000 lives, tens of thousands of billions of lives he could recall. And he knew what his name was, he knew what his family was, he knew what his position was. In all of those lives he gained complete insight into his journey through samsara in the first watch of the night. And in the second watch of the night he attained to the Dibbachakanyana. The Dibbachakanyana is knowledge of the rising and falling of beings according to their actions, good and bad. So he saw that certain beings had made good actions and had got good results, good rebirths, and other beings had made bad decisions in their lives and they had got bad rebirths because of it. So it's an insight into the workings of karma and vipaka and how that affects rebirth. Yeah, it's a really deep insight into the nature of reality. That was the second insight that he got on the night of awakening. And the third insight that he attained is Asavakya Jnana, which is when he realized the truth of the 4 noble truths: suffering, the arising of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and what was the path to the cessation of suffering. And then when he knew the 4 noble truths, at that time he had destroyed the pollutants, the asavas. He had completely destroyed the asavas and he had awakened to full and complete sambodhi, total awakening, just before dawn on Vesak night, which was a Wednesday, 588 BC. So that was the awakening of the Bodhisatta. Many events followed, of course, that you're aware of, but I can only summarize some of these events. He spent 7 weeks around the area of the Bodhi tree, 1 week under one tree, another week under another tree. And then Brahma Sahampati appeared to him and requested the Buddha to go and preach the doctrine. And there was some hesitation, but he agreed. He saw with his insight that some people are ready for awakening. And so he agreed to go and give his teaching. And he walked over to Benares, most specifically to Isipatana or Sarnath, and there he preached the Dhammacakka Pavatana Sutta on the Asala July full moon night. And then in that rains retreat, the rains retreat follows the July night of the July full moon night. In that rains retreat, Yasa, Sujarta's son, came out from Varanasi, and he attained awakening. And at the end of that rains retreat, there were 61 arahats in the world, and the Lord Buddha sent them out in different directions to go and give the teachings to the people, for the happiness of people, for the welfare of all beings. And he himself headed back towards Gaya, where he had attained awakening. He met with the 3 Kassapa brothers. He converted the Kassapa brothers and their 1,000 disciples. And with that 1,000 disciples, he went into Rajagaha to fulfill his promise to King Bimbisara. And he gave the teaching to King Bimbisara. King Bimbisara also attained to stages of awakening. And then from there, he went to Kapilavatthu. Eventually went to Kapilavatthu, and as we saw a couple of months ago, that was also on Vesak full moon day, when he arrived in Kapilavatthu and gave teachings to his family, and then his family, his father, and then his brother, and then his son, and also, for that matter, his sister, and other members of his family also were brought into the Sangha and attained awakening. Right, now for 45 years the Lord Buddha was giving his teachings throughout ancient India, traveling by foot all the time to different places to see different groups. And the Dhamma, that he taught, it's collected in about 17,000 suttas, 17,000 teachings that come down to us from the Lord Buddha, collected in the Sutta Pitaka at present. And as it works out, it's about one teaching for one day. The suttas are what constitute the teachings that come down to us, and it's like an enormous multifaceted diamond. Just like all of these things connect up in the Lord Buddha's lives, as in the Bodhisattva's lives and in the Buddha's life, all these people are joined up together in certain relationships and everything like this. When we read the Lord Buddha's teaching, it's like looking at a multifaceted diamond, and you look at it from this angle and it tells you one story, and you look at it from that angle and it tells you another story, and you look at it from another angle and it tells you another story. But all the time it's telling you about the reality of life on earth, and how it arises, how it ceases, and the path to get to the cessation. So the Lord Buddha's teaching is really, really a wonderful thing that's unparalleled in human teaching.